Welcome, everyone, to the captive audience. Starting a few minutes late here today. I'm Kevin Hoare, and I am not stuck on stupid, but we are going to talk about some people today who are. And by the way, this is going to be I think, unless there's some grand news that is even worth talking about regarding our most recent former president, Joseph R. Biden, also known as President Brandon. I'm going to retire this hat. I think it's time to retire it and look forward. And so, watch for the next episode. I will have a new hat to share with you, and hopefully an interesting one, and we can get a trend going here. I would love to feature clever hats, ones that help us make the points that we have to make on this show and tell a story. And so, glad to be here with you tonight. It is the 3rd of February, the day after Groundhog Day. Puxatawny Phil has predicted 6 more weeks of winter. I don't know if that only applies to the East Coast or Pennsylvania or the whole country, but yes, it's good to see you guys as well. And I am glad to be back for my trip, and hopefully we're going to continue to see the kind of progress we've been seeing nationally and see that impact here in Oregon. But some people are not getting the message. Anyway, let's launch into it because there's been a lot of very interesting news and headlines here in recent days and even in the last week. And I think a few of them have stood out to me in particular. But today, an Iowa attorney general is leading a group of 17 other Republican attorney general in supporting President Trump's bid to end recognition of birthright citizenship. And I think this is an important moment because we've had a lot of things that have been done to our Constitution over the years, some through abuse by the executive branch, simply choosing to ignore parts of it. Other parts have been done by the courts themselves. And now we should be getting back to where the people's elected representatives in Congress and our state legislatures take on actually governing and passing laws when they want something to be the case. Birthright citizenship is a result of a conclusion somebody made in the past, and actually long after the 14th Amendment of the Constitution was passed, which was specifically added in order to recognize the citizenship of African Americans, newly freed slaves in the South, to prevent them from being deprived of citizenship by Southern states after the Civil War. And it was affirmed a couple of different times subsequent to that in decisions in the late 19th century. But at some point, a decision was made that the idea of an anchor baby could actually come into existence, that you could simply show up on U.S. soil and end up having a U.S. citizen child simply because you visited for a day on the day that you happen to give birth. And this is going to be a big deal because right now the system is just, it's exploited. It's open to abuse. And there aren't other countries in the world that do this. So you might say, well, that's special to the United States. Well, it's also not in the Constitution. But there are people who are saying that they think it's there. Sound familiar? So this is not what was intended by having a 14th Amendment, and therefore has never been passed into law or the Constitution by Congress. It is not a reflection of an act by people's elected representatives or the many states that have to be involved with ratification. But they are looking at this seriously, and President Trump has issued an executive order on this. So stay tuned, because I think we're going to hear a major debate that's going to shape the direction of this country. If someone wants a person to be recognized as a citizen simply because they show up for any period of time in the country, and give birth, and have that person recognized as a citizen, then they should have a debate in Congress and pass it into law. And if it requires that the Constitution be modified for that to happen, then that's what they must do. But simply going around and deeming something to be the case because they feel that way is not the way our system of jurisprudence should work. And I think there's going to be I predict that the Supreme Court will eventually hear this case, and then eventually Congress may be required to place a statutory definition on what is stated in the 14th Amendment, which is, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. It's that statement that is not defined as the way it's being interpreted now to create birthright citizenship. It is a statement that, if you look at the original intent, was intended to make it so that people who were already present in the country and born in the country who were Black slaves would have citizenship. And by the way, people in the Native American or American Indian communities were not citizens, not considered citizens until sometime early in the 20th century. And you would think that the 14th Amendment would have applied to them, but it did not. That was done subsequent to that by acts of Congress recognizing Native Americans as full citizens. And so I think, and of course, the sons and daughters of diplomats born here from foreign countries are not considered citizens. So there's going to be a big debate, and we're either going to have a system that follows the Constitution, or we're going to have a fight over what that system should be. And hopefully that happens. Now, lots of other news here today, and the sanctuary state situation is going to continue to develop, but I think right now we're trying to get people in place here in the U.S. government, and the Trump appointees to the various positions that have been confirmed. So John Radcliffe, director of the CIA, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, who's already out there carrying the Trump foreign policy straight to foreign leaders and making it clear to them where the president's coming from and what the priorities are of the American people. I believe Doug Burgum has been confirmed as Interior Secretary, and it looks like the Senate has just confirmed Chris Wright as the Energy Secretary. And he even got some bipartisan support in that vote, which is unusual and perhaps going to happen in token instances as we move forward. And as we know, Pete Hegseth has been confirmed as Defense Secretary last week. And that one required a vote because of some Republicans who didn't vote for him, just a few, that required a tie-breaking vote by the vice president, which did happen. But I think it's time. Energy is a super important one, and we have somebody who understands that we need to have all energy options, that it has to be affordable and reliable, and not reliant so heavily on government subsidies to be even feasible, much less in the long term reliable and practical. So the mission is to become an energy superpower, and I think we actually can and will do that because we have the oil and the gas, but we also have other sources of energy here, and the ability to leverage even more, such as nuclear. So please stay tuned for what happens next with energy, because energy equals civilization. It's simple as that. And if you suddenly found yourself for a year and a half or two without access to electricity, you would not think you were living in the modern era or in a civilized country anymore. So that is our mission, is to make sure that we continue to progress on this and not throw it away thinking that we're going to change the world's temperature simply because we decide to no longer use natural gas to heat our homes and our water and our food. Other news. And I don't know if there's been a more recent development here. I think the final vote might be tomorrow, but Pam Bondi, the Senate has invoked cloture, and Pam Bondi, the debate has ended, and now they're going to move to a final vote on Pam Bondi's confirmation. And I'm very excited about that. I met Pam Bondi in mid-September during a border visit where I accompanied the congressional candidate Monique Despain, and we traveled there with a group that showed us what was really going on at the border. You could see just how unsecure it was. We heard the stories. We saw the border wall, the pieces of the border wall that had not yet been used in construction that the Biden administration just left on the ground. And as we know, they tried to sell it off for 5 or 10 cents on the dollar. Well, I got to meet and talk with Pam Bondi there, and I knew that when she ended up being tapped by President Trump for this role, that she'd be fantastic. She is a fighter. And so anyway, there was a vote 52 to 46 so essentially a party line vote in this case. I don't know. It looks like somebody might be missing that did not vote, but 52 to 46 to end debate and move to a final vote. She advanced out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which I got to watch some of the testimony in her hearing, her statement and the questions. And she ran circles around the morons in the minority in the Senate. And but it was on a party line 12 to 10 vote in that committee. She is going to focus on enforcing federal law. She's not going to look at political affiliations. She's going to end the weaponization of our Department of Justice and the FBI, and she's going to get the Department of Justice back in the business of protecting the rights of people and protecting our country from foreign threats, which is one of the roles that they have, particularly through the FBI. And so look forward to that. When she gets in there, this is actually one of the most important positions in the government, and the one where President Trump hasn't always had somebody he could trust in that role, or somebody that was going to follow through or deliver. And he's going to have that with Pam Bondi. She is a go-getter and about 10 times as smart as all the Democrats that take issue with her. Susan Collins has announced that she's going to support Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence. And that's really good news, because there was some concern that some of the people that are a little bit in the middle, the moderate Republicans, might not go for her nomination. But with Susan Collins endorsing her, John Cornyn endorsed her last week, I think momentum is building. And Tulsi is a big advocate for standing up to and fighting against terrorism, which the DNI, that position was invented to make sure that all of the different agencies would feed their intelligence to a department that could create a unified picture and keep the White House informed and keep the president informed, so they can make decisions without siloed information like we had in 9/11. And so I think she's going to actually do a very good job. I've met her as well. She came to Oregon and spoke last year. And so, or was it the fall of the year before, I think. And of course, she's a former Democrat who became an independent and then a Republican, and has very few good things to say about the Democrat Party, to put it mildly. So that's what's happening as we get our folks in place. Momentum is picking up. President Trump's executive orders are being issued, and they're being challenged in the Democrats are suing in court. We're also experiencing a lot of very interesting moves to slash the federal bureaucracy. And here's one of them. Of course, this morning, the U.S. Agency for International Development, which takes American money and gives it away to governments and non-governmental organizations around the world, has been shut down temporarily and may not see the light of day again. There was just enormous corruption there. This is something that Elon Musk said their Doge group was uncovering. One of the other things that was uncovered is that apparently at the Department of Treasury, if a request is put in for a funds transfer, they're simply approving it. And some of these funds are going to entities. They've never disapproved it, apparently. And these funds are going to entities that are on terrorist watch lists, organized crime, cartels, and not to mention the plethora of international groups that are pushing woke agendas. And so I think this is a grand opportunity to slash government, but also stop corruption. And so the U.S. Agency for International Development is the administrator has been fired, and that makes the Secretary of State Marco Rubio the acting administrator for the agency. And this morning, the employees showed up and found out the doors were locked. So I think it's actually showing people that he's very serious about all of this and that they're going to take forthright and direct action. They're not going to screw around. It's not all talk. And here's another one. Trump administration notifies 1,000 EPA employees they could be laid off, quote, immediately, unquote. As a probationary trial period employee, the agency has the right to terminate you immediately. And the process of probationary removal is that you receive a notice of termination. Your employment is ended immediately. This is the 1,000 Environmental Protection Agency employees. Now, let's not forget, during the Brandon administration, they ran up and dramatically expanded not only the number of employees, but also the regulations that they were having these employees apply to all the businesses in the country, and has become a massive burden. And so now there's going to be a reckoning with that too, which is fantastic. I think we're going to also see very soon, I think it's the 6th of February. So let me see, today's Monday. So by the end of this week, I believe there's going to be I think it's the 6th, federal employees are going to have the option to take to accept retirement. In effect, they get X number of months of severance through September, but they discontinue immediately their employment. And people who do not accept that option will be required to return back to work in person, just like the rest of us face when we work in private sector businesses. And they've been told that quite some of them will experience or face great uncertainty about whether their jobs will exist. And I think these EPA employees are actually finding out about that big time right now as well. So, this was a welcome thing too. I was very pleased to see that Elon Musk, he's hiring a team of young engineers between 19 and 24 years old to modernize the government software. And so we know that the government is slow and behind. They start behind, they move slow, they stay behind, they fall further behind, and they literally have some departments that can't function or can't even find or adequately manage the information and the data that they have. So I guess the Wired magazine has put out that that Musk and Peter Thiel, another Silicon Valley icon, are moving forward to try and attack this incredible inefficiency. And they've labeled this the modernizing federal technology and software to maximize efficiency and productivity. That's an executive order. And there's one of the hires that they're bringing on board, Luke Ferrator, received a $250,000 award last year for his contributions as a member of a team who developed an AI program that translated the Pompeii scrolls. Like, these guys know how to take AI and cut through all the crap and start to master the data and the information that we've got, and also find the corruption, the waste, the fraud, and the abuse. This is going to be fantastic, and I'm excited to see what they can do. I'm a big believer that if you can if you can figure out what's going on with the data, you can figure out what's going on, and then you can take action after that to correct it and to send some of the people that have been living high off the hog packing. So anyway, that's good news. More good news. I'm optimistic that Kash Patel is going to be confirmed. I am very hopeful. I think he is actually just what the FBI needs. And the Democrats got up there, grandstanded last week, lied about him. But I think we're all going to find that Kash Patel is heading for confirmation, and the people that they're already starting to get rid of at the FBI that were part of the corrupt January 6th prosecutions, the corrupt weaponization of the FBI and the DOJ against President Trump, and also this group that's kind of functioned as the deep state. Many people who were aware of or part of the cover-ups of the Bidens and what they did. Also, the problem that they had with being part of the Crossfire Hurricane program, where they created the fake Russia collusion, the way they covered up the laptop, that Hunter Biden's laptop, and claimed it wasn't real and hid it during the 2020 election. There's a lot of heads that got to roll. But one guy that I know can do it, it's Kash Patel. He is a fantastic, super smart, very serious guy who actually started off as a defense attorney in Florida. So this guy's seen all different sides of and he in fact brought forward evidence that he himself was aware of and possessed, that President Trump had requested or offered more than 10,000 National Guard troops on January 3rd, 2021 to Nancy Pelosi, and it was refused. That is now pretty obviously something that Nancy Pelosi bears responsibility for, and she needs to be held fully accountable. That is without a doubt necessary. Here's an article that's really good. It's the Foundation for Freedom Online and the Public Interest Legal Foundation. They issued a report that spotlighted what's happening in South Dakota and Oregon, saying that both of these states have automatic voter registration, and found non-citizens on the respective voter rolls last year. Also, in addition to this, a related story is that a couple of conservative lawyers here in Oregon have sued and have filed a lawsuit because apparently our new Secretary of State, Tobias Reed, has caused the data that the evidence, the records of voter records here in Oregon to be removed and destroyed of non-citizens, and also of wrongfully removed voters. So we've got a tremendous issue here in Oregon. It's got to be addressed head on, because if you can't trust the voter registration system in this state, and you can't trust the vote, it's that simple. Apparently 24 states and Washington, D.C. have automatic voter registration. And of course, we are all well aware that Oregon is a state that has found non-citizens on the rolls and even froze their automatic motor voter DMV voter registration system just before Election Day this last year. You got to wonder how many people got through the system anyway and voted. We may never know, because our current Secretary of State's too busy trying to circumvent accountability and make sure that people can't get a hold of the information to find out what happened. And of course, we have no idea or no accountability for whether or not this problem has been fixed or just how widespread it was. So let's go to court. Let's find out. I mentioned earlier about Marco Rubio going and talking to foreign leaders, one of his first trips, Panama. And they've started putting enormous pressure on the president of Panama, who in some ways is somewhat pro-American and friendly. But, you know, this has been going on for a long time before this president was there, that China had been effectively absorbing the business community in Panama. They had been deeply involved, throwing money in there. Panama was says they will not renew their agreement as part of the so-called Belt and Road Initiative, which often involves what's called debt diplomacy, where China lends you money and then you have to go spend it on buying construction projects from Chinese companies to build on your soil. Some of those projects fail and you still owe the money. We famously heard what happened in Sri Lanka with that. I believe Ecuador is another country where they essentially have had to go into default because a faulty dam was built by the Chinese using money the Chinese lent them that they still technically owe. But Panama has a Hong Kong-based company, and Hong Kong is no longer a free city of independent business people, but that company owns and controls facilities at ports on both ends of the canal. I've seen video from a Confucius Institute sent by Michael Yan, a intrepid reporter and somebody who travels frequently to Panama, showing what they're doing there to actually recruit elites and the children of elites to start to adopt communism, and to and also it's a spy factory. It's where they can go and recruit spies and flip them. And so there's a real problem in Panama. The first step after the Rubio visit is a discussion of them exiting the Belt and Road Initiative. But I think they got a long way to go. And President Trump said this morning that they are going to have a talk on Friday with the Panamanian president. But he's serious as a heart attack. He said in plain and unambiguous terms, the treaty, first of all, the Panama Canal Treaty, signed in 1977, I think, or 79, that turned over the Panama Canal to Panama after we had built it and maintained it for the 20th century, that we retained the right to take action in order to protect our national security and our rights under the treaty. And we didn't, the treaty granted the canal to Panama, not China. So when China gets undue influence over this, we're going to act. And I think this is going to take a while, but I think we're going to see these countries come around and be highly aligned with us. We've got to start kicking China, which is influence peddling and throwing money around in Central and South America. We got to kick them out, basically. But we're going to need the help of these Central and South American countries. Now, we can get their attention a lot of ways. Today, President Trump actually very successfully got the attention of the Mexican and Canadian, the Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau and the Mexican President Sheinbaum. And he did it by moving forward over the weekend with plans to impose 25% tariffs on the products coming from both countries. Today, he had a discussion with each of them and agreed to suspend those tariffs for 30 days. In Canada, it's going to be more of a discussion about what they're going to do next. And Canada is going to appoint a fentanyl czar. And this is all the tariffs are about, is getting these countries to stop letting fentanyl come into our country, put a stop to it. And so that's Canada. Mexico, Sheinbaum has agreed to send 10,000 National Guard troops to the border and stop illegal immigrants and fentanyl from crossing into our country. I think it's a trust but verify situation, but we'll see what they do. What the proof's in the pudding, right? And it's going to be a big decision to see if these guys actually follow through, because President Trump isn't going to just go along to get along. He is definitely going to hold them accountable for results and for action, because fentanyl is killing 100,000 Americans a year, plain and simple. And so we have no reason to cut them any slack on this. If they want to cooperate, great. If they don't, then they can watch their economy twist in the wind. We may see some of our products, some of them go up in price, although usually it affects the supplier and the buyer, kind of half and half. But we got to stop 100,000 Americans from being killed and our cities being gutted by these by fentanyl. China has had a 10% tariff imposed on it, which will go up if there isn't some action from China actually stopping the shipment of precursor chemicals from China to the Mexican drug cartels, who then use super labs to create fentanyl and crystal meth, which is the primary source of, is where it's coming from, is there across the border from Mexico. So you got to say one thing's for sure: President Trump is taking action and he's not wasting time. Meanwhile, back here in Oregon, it turns out that $1 billion has been spent of federal money on schools, and yet we've managed to achieve the worst test scores in the nation. This in a column in the Oregon Roundup by one of the guests we've had on the show in the past. His name's Jeff Eager. Fantastic guy, very smart, and the money that has been spent in this state has entirely failed to produce results. In fact, it's managed to produce the opposite of the results that people are expecting. So I think you're going to see money stop flowing if we don't see results start happening. And people who refuse or even decide to fight against the administration as they try to fix these problems, and it's not just education, it's sanctuary state, it's law enforcement, it's protecting the country from terrorists. It's a whole slew of things that voters in Oregon actually do really want. And we're going to find out how Democrats here in Oregon are going to react. So take a look at that story, and maybe we'll have Jeff on here soon, because I think, Democrats are starting to piss and moan about how they just want, a blank check from the federal government to go fund everything that's going on in the state, while they fail to solve the problems. While the wildfires get worse, the education gets worse, the energy gets more expensive. the crime goes up, and they want more money. So maybe that's going to end now. There's some interesting perspectives on the Democrats right now. Here's another one. Home affordability crisis is taking a toll on America's young adults. Many Americans, especially young adults, have been priced out of buying a home and have given up on home ownership entirely. And get this, this is the shocking change that's happened in the last 10 years to the affordability of homes, particularly for Gen Z, for young people. They don't really, it's absolutely unaffordable. And the wages haven't kept up with inflation. But you get this, based on the average salary in the US, a home buyer can afford a home that costs $110,928. The average, the medium home price today is $420,400. So what the average home buyer on the average salary can afford is a fraction, about a fourth of what a home actually costs. And this isn't where you just save a few pennies and put it away. It's really entirely unaffordable. It says here, in the last 10 years, the supply of home that young families on a median income can afford to buy has gone from 50% of the available homes to a mere 15% as home prices and mortgage interest rates have risen. So this is a major impact on American life. When you talk about the American dream, we kept hearing from Democrats that everything's fine and don't worry about it. The economy has never been better. Well, no wonder people didn't believe that crap. And it turns out that there are some ideas that will require regulatory changes so they can free up land and free up commercial stuff that's zoned for commercial use so that they can start to build homes. They have to increase the supply. It's simple as that. But standing in the way are governments like the government in the state of Oregon, Metro in the Portland metro area, many local governments around the state who think that these regulations that choke off the ability to build any homes, much less affordable ones, are just super awesome and they should keep them. It's the government that's in the way. They just want more money, but they refuse to fix the regulation. Time is up. Time's up. The Democrats don't seem to be understanding or getting the message from the last election. And I want to share with you a few stories here that kind of lay this out. So an opinion piece in the Atlantic entitled, "The Democrats Show Why They Lost." Speaking to the Democrat National Committee, which met to select its new leadership this past weekend, the outgoing chair, Jamie Harrison, attempted to explain a point about its rules concerning gender balance for his vice chair race. The rules specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 officers must be gender balanced. As the explanation became more increasingly intricate, Harrison's elucidation grew more labored. To ensure our process accounts for male, female, and non-binary candidates, we conferred with our Rules and Bylaws Committee co-chair, our LGBT caucus co-chair, and others to ensure that the process is inclusive and meets gender balance requirements in our rules. To do this, our process will be slightly different than the one outlined to you last week, but I hope you'll see that in practice it is simple and transparent. So the Democrat Party, at least in theory, is an organization dedicated to winning political power through elected office. But there seems to be little evidence that they got the message from the last election that this is exactly the crap that people hate. Democrats are true believers in this, but they think that all of this gender non-binary stuff, these quotas, these crazy rules that are now being negated by executive order by the Trump administration is something that people really want, and they don't want it. But the Democrats apparently think it's all important. And anytime one of these groups starts shrieking in complaint, they just do what those groups want. That's one of the reasons why Democrats to this day remain at sea. They don't understand what happened, why people rejected them, why their presidential candidate was rejected, why they lost control of the federal government. This is going to be a long walk in the wilderness, and Democrats are going to be trying to figure this out. And they didn't have people that were smart enough to question whether or not Joe Biden should have run again. That's how really awful their leadership has performed. Now, here's some news for you, and I think it's a sign of where Democrats are going and what they want to see in the future. Gun control activist David Hogg, who was, quote unquote, a survivor of the Parkland High School mass shooting, has been elected vice chair of the Democrat National Committee. He's 24 years old. And so now this guy is going to be up there. He's somebody who's engaged in demagoguery and hyperbole and frankly outright distortions and lies for years on social media. And now he is going to be one of the people leading the Democrat Party. That's the direction that they're going now. It is apparent that they learned absolutely nothing. President Obama didn't learn anything. He praised the new DNC chair that's been elected. I'm back. I don't know. Something happened. I had a little computer crash and I just relaunched the computer and rejoined. So sorry about that, folks. But I was getting near the end of the show anyway, and I only had a couple of other things to share with you. Um, but, uh, computer crashes happen. And even though they're pretty unusual, I was talking about uh, David Hogg. But there was one other story or two other stories I wanted to share with you before I wrapped up. And one is that the Democrats here in Oregon actually think that the message they got out of the last election is that Oregon wants to spend all of its time fighting against the Trump administration, launching a resistance against the Trump agenda. And this is what um, far left, corrupt Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley called for at a town hall in Eugene, Oregon, as well as another one out on the coast. And he said he was trying to calm the fears of uh, uh, local constituents. But actually, I tried to go to this town hall, and I can tell you that the town hall was closed to um, people that wanted to attend. They were forced to stand outside because they said they technically had did not have enough space in the South Eugene High School gym, and they posted a little handwritten sign that said, "Sorry, you can't come in." Um, and I have no idea if they took questions. He basically just didn't really talk about solving any of the problems. He said, in fact, he wants to assure illegal immigrants in Oregon that Oregon will continue to enforce its sanctuary law, and that they're going to. I guess that means they're going to protect criminals, criminal illegal aliens from deportation. So that's a U.S. senator who apparently doesn't believe that the country should deport criminals that don't belong here. So, but he called for resistance against the Trump agenda. And I don't remember that any of the Democrats in the last election, including Val Hoyle, and this is in her district, talking about how their main job was to fight against securing the border, to fight against getting criminals out of our communities, to fight that they were going to launch a resistance against trying to shut down the flow of fentanyl into our state, that they wanted to launch a resistance to getting our economy revived and making sure that energy is affordable. Did they run on those things? Not that I recall. So now we're finding out what they really stand for, and everybody's got to remember this because this is what they really believe. So time to hold them accountable. Meanwhile, the brilliant brain trust here in Oregon has decided to prioritize revisiting and taking further steps in banning plastic single-use checkout bags. The great crisis of plastic checkout bags. It's clearly been the top issue in all of the elections, and I'm being very facetious. All of these elections that have taken place in recent years, that has clearly been the number one issue. Well, this is apparently what they're talking about in Salem, is that, and they've got lobbyists going down there, and from Environment Oregon, and from the Surfrider Foundation, and this is their priority. They're going to fight to resist reducing crime in our communities, getting fentanyl and criminals out of our communities, making our communities more affordable. Instead, they're going to focus on going after plastic bags. There you go. That is who's representing you in this state here and now and today. And by the way, these town halls that they've been holding, they're really just anti-Trump rallies. Try to get in there and ask a question as somebody who may not necessarily agree with the point of view or the policies of Val Hoyle and Jeff Markley. Give it a shot. You can't. They don't want to hear from you. The crowd, I'm willing to bet anything, will shout you down on behalf of the elected officials. But we'll see if you ever get a chance to ask anything at all. Most of these events are rigged. They have designated people who, just like in the Biden, Karine Jean-Pierre press conferences that they would hold with Biden, where they would ask questions, but they never ask a question, take a question from, say, Fox News or Newsmax or something like that. They would only take questions from the lapdog media, and they would even know what those questions were in advance. This is kind of how they run town halls now too, and they make sure the seats go to their supporters who show up early, and that's how they roll. So there's going to be a lot more to tell here in the coming weeks about what's going to happen. Hey, everybody. Looks like I'm back again. I hope this lasts for a couple more minutes, and I'm sorry for the computer problem here. It just crashed again. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap up the show here because now you've gotten a taste of what's happening, not only nationally, but also what the Democrats are doing in this state. And it's a problem because they are not taking seriously the problems of the people of Oregon. They think that their job is to resist and fight. That's what they thought 8 years ago. I don't think that's where people are now. I don't think they're interested in banning plastic bags. I think they're interested in affordable, safe communities, and they want criminals out of our communities. It's that simple. And my evidence of this, cost of living outpaces homelessness as a concern for suburban voters. It's just another piece. It's another data point that says that in Clackamas and in the Portland metro area, cost of living outpaced homelessness as a concern, 64% to 59%. That's still a lot of people concerned about homelessness, but it's becoming too expensive to live here. And I think that is where the focus of the people running our state should be. And let's actually make sure that people understand and share this show with everyone you can to tell them what the Democrats are truly focused on and what's happening at the national level to fix the problems and how we have to get out there and support and explain this to people. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining me here tonight. Sorry for the computer crashes and the technical problems, but yes, third time's the charm. You guys have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow night on the next episode of the Captive